All right, we're here with Culture Talk, and we have today Senator Troy Carter. How you doing today?
Doing great, Mario. Happy to be with you, brother.
I'm excited to have you here. This is actually my first time getting to interview a politician, so I'm excited about it. You know, so I want to just jump right into the first question if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
All right, so I've heard you mention once before that no one should run for office that do not have a passion or a commitment for positive change. So I asked the question of what fuels your passion for positive change in the 2nd District of Louisiana.
You know, the need for leadership, the need for resources. You know, my mother and father divorced when I was very young. My mother raised 6 of us on her own and taught us the importance of giving back. My mother went back to school, got an undergraduate degree, became a classroom school teacher, taught for 40 years in the school system between Orleans and Jefferson Parish. And I watched her struggles and I watched her commitment. And it ignited something in me to want to give back, to be a part of the solution, to work, to help people. And the passion, man, there's something very special about helping somebody that feels pretty good. When someone's hungry and you're able to give them something to eat. When someone needs help and you're able to help them. There's an indescribable kind of, you know, you hear at Christmas time it's better to give than to receive.
Right.
My career in public service has been that way my entire life. Better to give than to receive, and to be able to be a part of the solution has been what's given me the energy to wake up every day, tackle tough issues, and fight for the people of Louisiana.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You just mentioned, you had a lengthy career in politics. So I would like to ask, what would you say to a younger voter who might feel like, okay, well, I've seen other politicians that haven't made much change, and things seem the same all the time. Like, why should I vote for him?
I would say to them that I encourage young people to get involved in the process. I was 26 when I first got elected. I served in the House of Representatives. I served on the New Orleans City Council. I now serve in the Senate. But between the time when I was on the City Council and now, I had about a 13-year break where I wasn't in elected office. Mm-hmm. But I continued to work in the community. I continued to provide food for the hungry through my annual Thanksgiving dinners and toy giveaways at Christmas time. Back to school supplies for young people who might not otherwise have that number 2 pencil, that cigar box, Elmer's glue, and a pair of scissors. We continue to provide those resources to help, albeit as a private citizen. So, my service has not just been as an elected official, it's been as a private citizen, and now an elected official again. And I would say to anyone, I'd encourage them to come and be a part of the process. I'd encourage our young people to volunteer, to get involved in the community, to come and be a part of fixing things and making things better. We think about people like John Lewis, the great John Lewis, who served in the United States Congress, who marched with Martin Luther King, mm-hmm. served for a very long time. He fought for a lot of things that we still fight for today. Right. A lot of freedoms that we're still grappling for. But you got to start somewhere, and then you got to keep pushing, man. You got to keep pushing. And you might not get it year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. But you know what? Together, we're going to continue to get the freedoms that we deserve. We're going to continue to break down those barriers that divide us and make it difficult for people to access education, healthcare, loans, communities free of crime. But you know what? You just got to keep fighting. And that's what I've done. I kept fighting.
Yeah, great answer. You spoke before by saying that no one should be in jail for simple marijuana possession. So my question is, what's your plan to help people who might already have a black eye on the record that might have served previous sentences for minor marijuana offenses?
So people that are serving time for minor marijuana offense, that's non-violent offense, they haven't killed anybody,
right.
They haven't done a heinous crime, they had a joint. 17 other states recognize this as a legal substance. And once Louisiana gets to a point of legalizing, and once the country levelizes where marijuana is legalized in all 50 states, those people that have those convictions should have them reversed. They should be expunged and removed from their record forever. That's the sensible thing, it's the right thing to do, and it's what I'll fight to have happen.
What is your plan to fight against crime and poverty in the 2nd District of Louisiana?
You know, when I was on the city council, we fought for community policing dollars. We brought more resources from the federal government. We got boots on the ground. We educated police officers in sensitivity. We made sure that we had true reform, much like we're needed right now in 2021. There should never be a time that a police officer that's racist, that's hateful, that has any mental issues, should never have a gun or a badge. As your congressman, you can count on me making sure that we have the resources to do background checks that'll make sure we're vetting these people, to make sure if they have racial tendencies, if they have tendencies of intolerance. Listen, I'm a father with two black sons.
Right.
When my kids leave the house every day, I pray. And you know what I tell them? Make it home alive. No father should have to say that to his child. And I'm an elected official. I recognize the same pain that every other mother and father has when their children leave the house, when they leave the house. So I will fight for your sons, your daughters, like I will for my very own. Because that's what eradicating crime, making sure that we have the bad people locked up, we have communities that are safe, and we have police officers that are there to protect and serve, not to violate one's rights.
Well, you just mentioned, mental health, and I think that's a big issue going on in our state. So I would want to ask you, what are your plans to help fight against the mental health diseases and things that's going on?
And you said it right. It's a disease.
Yeah.
And how do you treat a disease? You treat it with care. Unfortunately, far too many people go untreated because they think it's a stigma to have mental health. Well, if you have high blood pressure, diabetes, you take medicine, you exercise, you deal with it.
Right.
And mental health is the same way. The problem that we have is we reduce the amount of funds that have been allocated for mental health so drastically that you have a whole host of people in every community that's out here bumping around alone, scared, with no help. And unfortunately, sometimes they get guns and they do harmful things to people, themselves, and communities.
Right.
I would fight to make sure that we put the kind of attention that's required on mental health. We have a society that really needs help. We have young people that really need attention. One of the things that I've proposed and will fight for is that we have a mental health agent, counselor, in every public school system, in every public school, to make sure that our young people have access to ways to deal with issues that they face. A lot of times, kids don't have anybody to talk to about what they're feeling, about what they're thinking. But if we had somebody in the school that was available, particularly the people who might not have insurance or have families that they can go and talk to, the dent that we would put in to the mental health crisis in our country would be significant. It's about time, attention, resources, and caring. I've got all of them.
Well, at this time, we want to ask you, can you name one thing you noticed from the previous congressman that held the 2nd District seat that you would do differently?
Well, yes. And if I was sitting with the Congressman, Cedric Richmond, as I have, who I'm very proud that he's endorsed me. Congressman Richmond is now a senior advisor to the President of the United States of America. And what that means to our community is more than we could ever imagine. For the first time ever, we have a connection to the White House.
Yeah.
And what that means to people of Louisiana is huge. And because of my relationship with Congressman Richmond, that's going to translate to access to the White House. And when you've got 435 members of Congress who are all competing for resources, the one that has a resource and a reach to the White House brings resources home a lot faster, a lot stronger. And if I were to quote what the Congressman said to me, he said, if there's one thing I would do better, I'd spend more time in the river parishes, and I'd spend more time working on environmental justice. And I will tell you, I heard it loud and clear, and it made me really happy, because if it's one thing that's very important to me, is to make sure that we have healthy communities, environmentally safe, while people still have jobs. A person should not have to literally die for their job. And we're going to make sure that they don't have to. That people can breathe, clean air, drink clean water, and enjoy an economy that still services the school systems, the local governments, and their households.
Yeah. Well, my next question, I watched one of the commercials where you spoke on fighting for a fair living wage. Can you elaborate a little more on that?
Yeah, I have fought for an increase in minimum wage for many years. Every year I file bills to attempt to increase minimum wage. In Louisiana, we haven't had an increase in our minimum wage in 11 years. In the 60s, minimum wage was roughly $1.05. In 2021, it's $7.25 an hour. Do the math on that. The pennies a year that is incrementally increased. You got the price of bread and eggs and milk and rice and home care, house care, use or buying and providing for your children,
Right.
their education, their health. It's all exponentially increased. Yet, the one thing that's stagnant is $7.25. And if I took a $5 bill, 2 ones and a quarter, and put it on the table, and asked you to mop the floors, empty the tank, clean the toilet, mow the lawn, serve a hamburger, push a grocery buggy, spin a record, and at the end of that hour, I gave you that $5, $2 and a quarter. That's what our citizens have to live with. That's what our people deal with every day. And they try to take care of their families with that. And they're doing the best they can. And we can do better. And I have fought for minimum wage increases, and I'll continue to fight. And some ask me, do you think we should ratchet it up? Go 8, 9, 10? No. We need to have a baseline of a minimum of $15 an hour. And then we need to tie it to a cost of living increase so it never has to be a political football again.
Right.
That it continues to rise according to inflation. Because I'd ask the same thing I asked you, I'd ask every other person out there. Ask yourself honestly, would you do all those things and get $7.25 before taxes? Because once Uncle Sam gets his piece, it's more like $5. And out of that, you got to pay your rent, you got to feed your children, you got to home your children, you got to educate your children, you got to transport your children. Unconscionable, unreal when people are doing it, and they're having a very hard time.
My next question is now that the vaccine is becoming more available, do you think Louisiana can gain control on the new cases and the spread of the virus?
Yes, I'm very hopeful that now that we have the vaccine, it appears to be getting in the community. Clearly we need to do a better job, even though we're starting to get more concentration. We've got to make sure that we get into every single part of this community. There's parts of this community that we haven't touched. We have communities of Black and brown. We have communities of poor people, of people that, for whatever reason, don't want the vaccine, afraid of the vaccine, have fears because they don't trust government. We can't just accept that and say, oh, this is a field of dreams. If you build it, they'll come. No, you got to bring it to them. You got to educate the people. You got to share with them the efficacy of the drug. Listen, I've got an 86-year-old mother, and the best test I can give anybody out in that community, I took my 86-year-old mother to get her shot. And if I took my mother to get the shot, that means I take your mother and your grandmother. And I believe in it enough to know that if we take the vaccine, if we continue to practice good hygiene, washing our hands, if we continue to wear face masks and socially distanced, we can get our arms around this. There's no doubt in my mind. We can learn to survive in this COVID environment and be healthier, live longer, and pray that we never have to go through another worldwide pandemic, but we should have learned from this one.
Well, that leads me to my last question I wanted to ask you personally. With COVID-19 this past year and now, a lot of us been dealing with many challenges on a personal level, some of us business-wise, things like that. I wanted to ask you, how have you been dealing with the stress of this post-pandemic environment we live in? I'm just curious.
Man, I pray all day.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you, my secret weapon is something I don't want to be a secret, because I'll tell anybody who wants to listen. I seek a higher calling, man. I pray. I trust God. This has been a very trying time. Lost a lot of friends. Watched people lose their businesses. I've seen the strain that it's had on our community. Seen the strain it's had on our world. And for me, I can't do it by myself. So I seek comfort in my faith. And then when I'm recreating, I got 2 dogs and a cat. And they don't talk back. And they wrestle, and they bark, and they meow, and they don't care what time I get home. They're just happy I'm there.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's good to just have some quiet time, and I enjoy my family. I've got a beautiful wife, and 2 great sons. My wife is a brigadier general in the United States Army, so we get a chance to reflect on the challenges that she's overcome. I've got a son who's a junior at Xavier University. I've got a freshman, a son that's a freshman at Howard. And family means everything. And so when I catch my breath and take my breaks, I try to do it with my family, with my pets, and reflect on why I do this. And I do it for their safety. I do it for their health. I do it for their happiness. And that also reflects on why I do it for the community. I do it for the safety of our community, the health of our community, the well-being of our community. And I believe firmly, to whom much is given, much is required. I was fortunate enough to make it out of a pretty tough neighborhood. I survived it. Many of my friends didn't. I love my neighborhood. I love my community. And I have a sense of commitment to fight for communities all over this district and all over the state. And so I'm energized by the hope that I hear and the needs that I see, that we can do better. And so I'm honored to serve.
Well, thank you. That concludes today's episode of Culture Talk. I'm just, like I say, honored to have you here. I'm pretty sure everyone's going to enjoy this interview because everything sounds well to me. Like, I'm excited to get out and be able to work myself in the upcoming weeks. So.
Fantastic. God bless you, man. Keep up the good work, and let's do our next show in Washington.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Everybody get your subscribe on. From all this to the world. It's my hell of a life TV. Everybody get your subscribe on. From all this to the world. It's my hell of a life TV. My hell of a life TV.